keep it lit. Tegan Marie fading away there with beautiful country music this morning. Hello, good morning, and many thanks indeed for joining us on AM Live. It is Wednesday, and of course today we have Standing on Guard coming your way, where we look at matters security here in the country, the region, and as always, taking a panoramic view of what is happening in the world as far as security is concerned. We are joined also this morning by Ambassador Erastus Mwencha, who is up and early. Good morning.
Very good, how are you?
Good, fantastic. I think you have not really marked you on, so I'll mark you later, and of course we shall continue with the conversation. But before we drill deeper, let's just see what is on the daily, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Dailies this morning, beginning with the Daily Nation. Still, the media is fixated on the developing story of Monica, and this is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Monica's Juba links, now it is emerging. A super wealthy former warlord lurks in the background as police work to find a motive for the killing of Nairobi beauty. Friends speak of powerful Sudanese politician who turned around the fortunes of a poor Kenyan family. This story continues on page 2 of the Daily Nation today. And maybe I can just give you also a scope of what it says here on page 2. Enter the general, how Monica made a fortune in Juba. It says Monica Kimani's father, Paul Garama, has dismissed claims that his daughter was married to South Sudanese politician, former warlord Daniel Await Akot, but admits that the politician is very close to the family. Close relatives and friends had claimed that Miss Kimani was married to Mr. Akot, and that it is through this connection that the family's fortune have improved over the past 3 years. Miss Kimani was killed by having her throat slit in the bathtub of her Kilimani flat on the night of Wednesday, September 19th. You can follow this story on page 2 of the Daily Nation today, through strong links to former warlord who has earned a fortune in politics. Kenyan girl who was killed in Nairobi 2 weeks ago landed big contracts, and that story of course is well fleshed out here on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Politician is a man of immense wealth. It says, like all other South Sudan millionaires, Daniel Awet Akot had earned his wealth by being strategically positioned within the new government as one of the elite soldiers who had come straight from the bush. Mr. Akot was appointed to the lofty position of the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly after the 2011 referendum, which gave him a chance to hobnob with everyone in the government. You can follow this story here on page 2 of the Daily Nation today. Also, the Standard is up next, and it is still following this story. Police pursue 4 friends. Irungu called for advice. Right, police pursue 4 friends. Irungu called for advice. Detectives narrow down possible motives for murder to implosion of love triangle or big money heist. Suspects' phone records put them on the trail of 4 friends he contacted and told he had done something disturbing. This story continues on page 6, I should say, of a Standard today. And also still on the front page there, Murang'a water claim bad. Water CS says it was wrong for Murang'a to claim ownership of water supply to Nairobi and demand payment. Aziria and Munga are summoned by MPs. Also, IMF don't block sugar imports. Lenders ask Kenya to open the market to sugar imports to break up cartels behind illegal imports and distortion of local production. You can follow that story also on sports. Man U, Bogper, Mourinho spat. You can follow that story inside the Standard also on page 47 today. The Star this morning is holding this particular splash for you. Why Raila Ruto fear each other, it says. Raila allies tear into Ruto's character, claim he's own worst enemy. DP supporters claim former PM is fearful of gains Ruto is making ahead of 2022, and this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Let me see if I can try and lift up the People Daily quickly for you so that you can see also what it is holding for us this morning. That is a People Daily. A quick look at that. Let me try and lift it for you so that you can see. Where is it? Right, I shall go to the Business Daily so that you can see what it is holding for us. There you go. Kenya defies austerity, buys 12 US helicopters. And this story continues on page 4. And we shall look at this particular, of course, move by the Ministry of Interior. This is where it says Kenya is set to acquire 6 new US-made light attack helicopter gunship in a multi-billion shilling deal that is being closed in the middle of severe austerity. An international arm magazine has said the planes are part of the 253 million shillings arms deal that Nairobi signed with Washington and got the United States Congress approval in May last year. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily. Right, let's see also what we have there. Wage employment in Kenya defense sector, and Kenya's national security budget is also given there. Last year, how it looked, Kenya created about 31.1 thousand jobs in the defense sector, an indication of its intensified war against terrorism. You can follow this story. And of course, we shall be crunching this number with a panelist here who are a security expert, an analyst here on Standing on Guard. Taxman deploy auctioneers to sell mastermind assets is another story. The Kenya Revenue Authority has sent auctioneers to seize the assets of cigarette maker Mastermind Tobacco over the company's failure to pay 1.99 billion shillings tax arrears. You can follow that story on page 4. Also, you can see the chapfallen face there of Evans Kidero. On the spot, former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero at the Milimani Law Courts yesterday during a pre-trial conference in a case where he is accused of economic crimes and abuse of office. This story continues on page 6 of the Business Daily today. Also, Speaker AG sued over land size law delay. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi and Attorney General Kihara Kariuki have been sued for failing to facilitate the enactment of a law prescribing minimum and maximum land holdings by private individuals as stipulated in the Constitution. That is a story that you want to follow on page 4 of the Business Daily. Let's see at what we have on the ticker here. Munga Wairia row over water farm spills to Senate. The fight between Tycoon Peter Munga and Murang'a Governor Mwangi Wairia over control of a water company has shifted to Parliament after the World Bank withdrew a 130 million shillings loan. Also, 23.2 million shillings, that is the value of Chinese investor Zheyong Yang shares in Home Africa after he acquired an 8.2% stake. That story, you can follow it on page 8. Also, students drive bribe away to death on Kenyan roads. Rampant cases of bribery in driving tests and acquiring a driver's license may be fuel and carnage on Kenyan roads, raising queries on the authenticity of the training programs. This story continues on page 12 and 13 of the Business Daily. Cooperative Bank set to lease 412 trucks to police for 2.2 billion shillings. Cooperative Bank joint leasing venture with South African logistics firm Super Group is set to bag its second major deal to supply 412 trucks to the Kenya Police worth 2.2 billion shillings in the current fiscal year. This story is tucked away on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. A quick look now at what we do have on the front page of Taifa Leo. This is how it looks this morning. Raila apigwa jeki ya katiba. Idadi ya viongozi wanaunga mkono marekebisho ya katiba yaongezeka. Mwito wagawanya wabunge wa Jubilee. That story continues on page 2 of Taifa Leo today. Also there, Messi na Kane kujua nani ndume, or Ken I should say. Kujua nani ndume. You can follow that story on page 21 and 24 of Taifa Leo. Yes, I'm reading it in Swahili, Kane. Let's see what we have also across the region. We can go to Tanzania. Milk import fee up by over 1,000% under new rules. New regulations require traders to pay 2,000 shillings for every kilogram of imported milk, up from 150 shillings, which translates into a 13-fold increase. This story continues on page 2 of The Citizen in Tanzania. Also more info there. Local processors happy with move. While milk importers are generally unhappy with the new fees, local processors see the move as an opportunity for them to flourish. We really congratulate the government for this decision, which will not only attract investors to Tanzania, but also benefit local livestock keepers, say the managing director of Iringa-based Asas Dairies Limited, Mr. Fahoud Jaffa. That story is on the front page of the Citizen today. Also, 265 billion shillings EU boost for agriculture productivity. We can see here Finance and Planning Permanent Secretary Dr. James and European Union Ambassador Roland van de Geer exchanging documents in Dar es Salaam yesterday after signing an agreement under which the EU will provide 100 million euros in financial assistance to Tanzania to promote productivity and competitiveness in the agriculture sector. That story is well covered for you on page 3 of the Citizen. Also, disbelief as exam results of 9 schools invalidated. It happens also in Tanzania. You can follow that story on page 2 of the Citizen as well. Also, World Bank withholds 110 billion shillings over Statistics Act. He says the World Bank is holding up to $50 million meant for Tanzania, saying it is deeply concerned about restrictions that the government has placed on freedom of speech concerning statistics. But the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance and Planning, Mr. Dr. James, said he was not aware of the existence of such funds. The government has neither requested nor embarked on a process to ask for $50 million from the World Bank for use by the National Bureau of Statistics. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Still there, we can also take a look at what is on the front page of Mwananchi. Mtandao wizi wa mitihani ya taifa. It's all about technology. Shule 4 za Dar, 3 za Mwanza na wilaya yote ya Chemba zafutiwa matokeo, wahusika wasimamishwa. You can follow this story also inside Mwananchi on page 3. Benki ya Dunia yazuia msaada wa bilioni 112 kwa Tanzania. You can follow that story on page 4 of Mwananchi. We cross over now to Uganda and we take a look at what is on the front page of the Daily Monitor. How your MP voted on mobile money tax. Public reacts after lawmakers vote on matter. 175 legislators absent from Parliament. You can follow this story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor. So it seems also this has actually passed. Zimbabwe also is following suit as well as far as taxation on the Internet of Things and mobile money is concerned. Also, you have 14 days to declare stand. FDC tells officials, and Mark to pay Nyanzi suspension lifted. And also there is here a standalone picture. New Mulago Hospital opens. No more medical tourism. This is what Museveni is saying. President Museveni, we can be seen here chatting with Health Minister Jen Aseng and the State Minister for Health Sarah Opendi during the opening of the 450-bed capacity Mulago Specialized Women and Neonatal Hospital in Kampala yesterday. This story continues on page 2 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Let's cross over to Rwanda. IMF confirms 7.2% economic growth rate for Rwanda. Rwanda on the rising here. The International Monetary Fund has retained Rwanda's economic growth projection for 2018 at 7.2%, owing to strong industrial activity and favorable rains that are expected to boost agricultural output. The update follows IMF's review of the economy, in which the fund held discussions with Rwanda government economic policymakers on the 10th and final review of the country's PSI-supported program. You can follow this story on page 3 of the New Times in Rwanda. We can see also a related picture there. That is Lore Redifa, the IMF mission chief to Rwanda, and Minister for Finance Usiziel Ndagaji Mana, and Governor for National Bank of Rwanda John Rwangombwa, chatting after the news conference that focused on policies that could support the completion of the 10th and final review of Rwanda's macroeconomic program supported by the IMF Policy Support Instrument in Kigali. Also, high potato prices push consumers elsewhere. This is on page 2, and $48.5 million projects to improve maternal infant services. Also, you can read all about this on page 8 of the New Times in Rwanda. I want to show you also what we have this week on the front page of the East African. And this is your splash today. Canada pulls think this is an old one. Let me just try and lift the current one for you. I've been sleeping this morning. Let's try and see if I can do that quickly. That should be... I will do that. Just beg your pardon, just to get it quickly for you. Okay, I'll try and lift it up for you later as well. But I can, in the meantime, show you also what is on the front page of the Nairobi Law Monthly. Breaking new frontier. This is all about the Minister of Interior, Matiang'i. He has held 4 dockets since 2013, the only CS to do so, delivering powerful results each time. Among others, he spearheaded digital migration, enacted land laws, and dismantled exam cartels with fire in his belly. Dr. Fred Matiang'i is champing at the bit for the challenge in his current job at the Ministry of Interior. Breaking new frontiers. By the way, you should know also that, yes, the Ministry of Interior was flagged as one of the most corrupt ministries as well. So will that also really blot his copybook? So this is what is on the front page also of the Nairobi Law Monthly, not about the corruption, but of course the man himself and how he is breaking new frontiers. You can all read all about this in the Nairobi Law Monthly as well. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the Nairobi Business Monthly, your latest edition. Can you trust your bank? For engaging in money laundering, CBK gave the culpable institutions a mere slap on the wrist. Of course, you know about the NYS cash that were transacted through some banks. That was Standard Chartered, the Equity Bank, and amongst others. And the CBK just gave a measly slap on the wrist in terms of penalties as well. And this is what has been captured by Nairobi Business Monthly. You can grab a copy and read all about it as well. Lastly, let me try and give it a try again, if I can try and trace that particular paper, the East African for you, or I'll do that much later in the course of the program, but because there's some of issues that we need to discuss there. But in the meantime, I can be showing you what we do have as editorial cartoons in the dailies this morning, just to give you a snippet of what they have drawn for us as well. And this is what we do have in the People Daily. Right, it's all about taxation, and you can see this is happening also in Uganda, how they voted for taxing of mobile activities, the transactions as well, and the calls. And this also is happening to us as well with the recent VAT that was slapped also on mobile transactions as well. Wow, big catch. This is what Stano has done for you as well, and that is what the small cat is saying there. Wow, big catch. Let's see what we have also inside the Daily Nation. Kitendawili, enough with the handshake, blankety blank. Now kiss this, right? And we know, of course, the slugget that has been going on, of course, that is between Deputy President William Ruto and Raila Odinga, excuse me. So we can see how the slugget is going on for the 2022. And this is what has been actually captured there by Munene for you today inside the Daily Nation. You'll find this. Lastly, let's see what we have inside the Star. And this is what Victor has done for us. Floaters in her solo Africa tour without porters. The First Lady, oh yeah, she's actually doing her Africa or solo Africa tour. She began in Ghana. We'll give you all the details. She'll be heading also to Mozambique and Kenya as well. And of course, we shall be covering that for you as well. I'll give you all the gritty details of this. But you can see there, a ball and chain, of course, to Air Force One. There's that debate about her really coming up with the soft diplomacy and what she's trying to do, which is flying in the face of what President Trump is all about, especially when it comes to Africa. The pronunciations and pronouncements from him regarding also us being the blankety blank hole. And of course, pulling away some of the support that he's been giving to Africa. So her really coming to Africa with the best initiative. What does this translate with the foreign policy of the United States with Africa as well? This is what has been actually captured here by Victor in the Star. And those are your dailies. Make sure you grab a copy of Daily Nation for this riveting story that is a developing story. Monica's Jubilinks, and this is a man, Lieutenant General Daniel Awet Akot, a former soldier and currently Deputy Speaker of the South Sudanese Parliament. What was the relationship here? People were saying they were having an affair. The family says no, it was not really an affair, but this man was very close to the family. So what does it have with also Monica's trips to South Sudan and the wealthy or the lucrative contracts that she was getting from South Sudan? That is a story that you want to grab a copy of a Daily Nation and follow. But for now, let's swing for the fences by looking at the highlights. Chilling tales of children who suddenly go missing in similar fashion across the capital. First Lady Melania Trump coos over kids in Ghana on solo Africa trip. And suicide bomber in Afghanistan targets election rally, killing 13. Now, child kidnappings are becoming a common problem in Nairobi that appears to be growing by the day. Across a section of parents in Nairobi fear that there could be a syndicate of abductors who are dragging and kidnapping children in different estates in Nairobi. NTV's Charity Mwangi starts us off.
They may be just faces of subjects of a far-fetched story about missing children, but their story may present the early telltale signs of a group of abductors who are becoming more bold as time goes by. The story of parents looking for their missing loved ones recently hit home for Mediatrix Amukaka.
Mamangu alisema kitu yenye anataka mtoto. Pia mzee wangu anataka nani? Mtoto. So hiyo ndio wasiwasi yenye nilikuwa nayo.
Her 5-year-old twin girls were outside playing in the busy Kawangware estate as they had done many times before, and she was in the company of relatives when the unthinkable happened.
Kuna mama mwingine akamshika mkono. Wakaanza kutembea naye. So kutembea naye akambaia nini? Yogurt na maji. Huyo mama akaanza kutembea tu na yeye. Nilimuuliza sasa mlienda wapi na huyo mama? Akasema huyo mama alinitembeza tu vile nilikuwa nimepika nduru akaniachilia.
She was found much later. Maybe it was as a result of good training. Maybe it was Clarine's survival instincts that kicked in. Whatever it was, it may have saved her life and possibly that of her desperate mother.
Kwanza sana mamangu aliniambia nimemnyang'anya watoto, nimekuja nao Nairobi, nilisema mimi mwenyewe nitalea watoto wangu. So au watoto kwa nini wamenishinda kulea? Nikafika mahali nikasema kama mamangu hajanipatia morali, sasa mimi nitafanya aje? Sijui nijiue. Enyewe nilikata roho nikasema mimi leo nisipopata mtoto wangu nitakufa.
On another end of the city in Pipeline Estate, a family recounts their last moment with their 3-year-old son Emmanuel, who they are yet to find.
Niko na slippers pia zimebaki hapo. Nikauliza nilikuwa anacheza nayo. Emmanuel ameenda wapi? Wakaniambia hata amekuwa anacheza hapo. Sasa mimi nikafikia maybe ameingia kwa nyumba ya mtu mmoja. So nikaanza kutembea nikaona hii floor yote, nikaingia kama nyumba hakuna mtoto.
His lonely toy motorbike and the shoes he was wearing gave some clue or rather suspicion on where he could be.
Inawezekana kuna mtu alimchukua akamfungia kwa nyumba, alafu maybe akangojea masaa za usiku wakati watu wamelala akamtoa. Mimi sioni vile maana huyo mtoto anaweza toka apande stairs huko juu ama teremke chini aache hii gari yake na viatu pia.
With there being an increase to the number of reports on missing children, there is a need for the authorities to look into the possibility of there being a group of people abducting children in different estates in Nairobi. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
Of course, this really highlights the big issue about child trafficking as well. We shall be also posing this particular question to our panelists today. What is really happening with the child trafficking and children disappearing, and some of them being, of course, found murdered and deeply in the thickest or the thick forest in the neck of woods. That is what we'll be, of course, looking at, and the raft of other issues on Standing on Guard today. Now, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has discovered several abnormalities in the financial management and the Homa Bay County Assembly. The EACC says the Homa Bay County Assembly withdrew money from the mortgages and car loan scheme fund bank account without the approval of a scheme committee. The findings implicate Assembly members who served between 2013 and 2017. Homa Bay Deputy Governor Hamilton Orata received the report for the county government, saying his administration will partner with the EACC to fight graft.
We seek to implement this report by adopting the Commission's preventive strategy to enable our institution to detect, prevent and combat corruption and unethical practices in the management of public affairs.
Whether people are corrupt or not, it's about whether there are loopholes that would encourage corruption. So that is the essence of this one. It is not an investigation, it is not an enforcement system, it is a preventive system where we work and we tell them, if you continue this way, you are likely to fall into a risk and money can get lost, or employees can get demotivated, or various other systems within the county.
Now, what I see is Samuel Chelugai has accused Murang'a Governor Mwangi wa Iria of creating unnecessary problems in the water provision sector in the county. Speaking before the National Assembly Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources, Chelugai said the governor has been misleading the people of Murang'a, alleging that they can't get free water, which the CS says is not possible. His remarks come during, they come during an escalating water row in the county.
The Murang'a County has been recruiting plumbers. I think, to my knowledge, 300 plumbers. I think we saw them also on media taking over water activities, and in the process causing massive leakage because of lack of technical know-how, and also endangering the consumers from pollution handling of the water in Murang'a County.
And he has guts to write letters to me. They are writing letters every day. Every person from the ministry is writing a letter. I've told them to select very beautiful girlfriends and write letters to. Me, I'm not one of the girlfriends.
Murang'a County government has interfered with the water services to residents of Murang'a through various actions. This is due to the misunderstanding over the control and management of water services provision and water utility assets between the county government and the water companies in the county.
And the Patel Dam case will be heard in Naivasha after the Naivasha High Court dismissed an application by the Director of Public Prosecutions seeking to transfer the case to Nairobi. The court had declined the application, saying that the DPP had failed to give enough grounds to prove that there was need to transfer the high-profile case where Patel Coffee Estate Managing Director Perry Mansour and 7 others have been charged with 48 counts of manslaughter. The DPP had gone to court seeking to transfer the case, alleging that the scene of crime and the witnesses had been interfered with.
Present. Mr. Karanja, for the 8th and 9th.
Now, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has recruited 90 new prosecutors to boost capacity to handle public cases. Director of Public Prosecution Rudin Haji says this is one of several efforts by his office to boost the capacity of public prosecutors and to present watertight cases before court in a timely manner. Haji spoke during the first day of the induction training of prosecution officers in a program that has involved the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the judiciary.
The issue of working together and directing the police, that will be very important, how they would do that, how you make a decision to charge so that we don't have miscarriage of justice.
It is not easy to package fact that we prosecute. The DPP has brought a new system which ought actually to be exactly the same to be for you to be pairing with us, so that we can partner in the field.
And President Uhuru Kenyatta has defended the recent integration of the regular and administration police, saying the new formation is aimed at improving efficiency in service delivery and ending impunity. The president spoke at State House when receiving exit reports from the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, and the National Police Service Commission NPSC. NPSC chairperson Johnston Kavuludi later led three other commissioners in an exit ceremony after serving their 6-year term as commissioners of the National Police Service.
It is hoped that these recommendations will go a long way in clarifying and simplifying command and control to improve both accountability and performance, and that they will make our police more than equal to face the challenges and threats to our nation.
If somebody decided to commit an offense elsewhere, I don't know whether it was a police officer or another Mwananchi or some Mkora, and cuts off the head of another human being, to bring to me to say, Kavuludi, you are next. Kavuludi and other people will always be next, because there is always somebody dying next. Even if you are to bring 20 human heads to me, it will not have scared me from performing my duty as Chairman, National Police Service Commission.
Recruitment of that 7,000 police officers from the year 2015 up to this point in time.
You surpassed all our expectations. You have done extremely well, and were led commissioners by a chairman who has integrity, who is wise, and who we must all thank for his extremely wise leadership.
But what do you reckon? Do you think the National Police Service Commission surpassed all the expectations as far as, the interrelation between that and the National Police Service itself is concerned? Of course, we saw a bit of a row from the go-getting when it came to the managing of the human resources. And we want just to hear from our panelists this morning, who are here with us as well, to talk us through what they think of some of the stories that we've done this morning. As I promised, we'll touch a bit on the child kidnapping that is happening in the country, and we're wondering why the spat and the sudden flash of interest on children. Let's just hear from our panelists this morning. I introduced to you early in the morning, if you joined us at the top of the hour, Erastus Mwencha. Ambassador Erastus Mwencha is a former chair of the African Union. And also we do have with us as well Dr. Hassan Khanenjo, who is the director at the Horn Institute. Also Professor Noami Damba, who is the Vice Chancellor of KCA University and also an expert on foreign policy and defense. And also we do have with us as well Captain Virunga Simiyu, who is the Executive Director of African Center for Security and Strategic Studies. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Right, let's just begin from this particular story, the performance of IPOA, performance of NPSC as well. Mr. Kavuludi, we have heard from the Cabinet Secretary saying that, yes, I think he performed well, or they exceeded our expectation. That is the Commission as well. But from your own estimation, assessment, what would be your assessment? Let's begin with the Ambassador.
Debarl, if you look at the public perception and the report that has just come up from EACC on corruption in the country, and also look at issues like what we are now being told about child disappearance, and the fact that there are reforms that are being implemented on police, when you say they exceeded, expectations, I think that is an overstatement. There's no question about it. And I think, let us be fair. From where I sit, you've just seen the report yesterday. I was actually alarmed to hear that there is a queue now in Malava for traffic that is moving to Uganda, and it's almost 20 kilometers. I couldn't just believe that. And it is all about corruption that is at the border. And this is a national tragedy, actually, because that is our survival route. I would say, if you look at, how even the police has performed in the last few months in terms of these extrajudicial killings which have not been explained, the performance even in the last elections, how none of those matters have been resolved, I would go ahead and say that they are overgrading themselves.
The overgrading?
Yes.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Wenonga. You think the overgrading?
Now, first I want to ask, was Amina speaking on behalf of the Minister for Interior or as the Minister for Education?
She was invited for that particular forum.
So she was speaking as the Minister for Education?
Yes.
So then we shall dismiss that statement the way it is. Because one, if she was representing the Minister for Interior, then we can say that is what Dr. Matiang'i was speaking about the commission. But if she was speaking as a guest, then she's totally wrong on how the commission has performed. Two things. We know there's, yes, on one side they've really tried because they walked into that office with nothing on the table. They've sort of established so many things that the law asked them to establish, but in the aspect of them transforming the police, I don't think they've achieved what we expected them to achieve. But I also understand that transforming the police in 6 years is a very difficult thing to do. We know security sector reform is a process. It takes time, it needs resources, it requires commitment from the politicians, it requires all-heartedness of acceptability. We call it local ownership. The police must own it for it to succeed. But we realize that from time to time, the commission members will be having issues with the 3 other commission members, that is the Inspector General and the 2 deputies. We also know that when the deputy chairperson passed, they never replaced her. When the other officer, Major Muya, got sick, they never replaced him. So we saw a lot of unnecessary encumbrances being put on the commission for it to be able to achieve. And you see, without the 2 commissioners, and these 3 are not really working with you, so the commission lacks a forum. So most of the decisions that were meant to be made by the commission outside the 3 plus the 2 that are not there made it very difficult for the commission to perform. So 50-50, yes, they've not reformed the police to the expectations that we expected, but we also know they've worked on serious policy matters, although they've done it towards the end of their term. But I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give them 6.
6?
Yes.
6, that will be a pass.
They've really tried, yes. Because I know, and I'll tell you this, you remember I was also part of the vetting process. So we know the commission has been given certain mandates to do. And the biggest mandate was policies on matters of human resource in the Kenya Police Service, National Police Service. And although these policies have been coming towards the end of their term, I realize they've actually given out about 6 policy frameworks, which to me is an achievement, because even if they are leaving now, if we have a good team that is coming in, which I'm not very sure, because this was a very strong team, by the way, because they came out from the public and it was the first one. People were really expecting them to work. So I think give them 6 over 10, because they've really tried within the constraints under which they worked. And for the 6 years they've been in office, what the other team will come in to do is now to actualize most of the systems and the policies this team had put in place. But with what the chairman is saying, Mwencha, of course, yes, the police has not been reformed. But reform takes time. It's a process. It requires ownership. It requires political goodwill. It requires strategies. It requires funding. And with all this put together, I think we are just now starting to see a bit of reforms in the police. Yes.
But looking also from that particular relationship that they had with the IG before in terms of human resource, there have been issues of also fake degrees that really some of the police officers were actually, getting. And I think that was not really adequately addressed as far as the issue of fake degrees. Remember when you had the issue of fake degrees as well, and some police officers were saying, yeah, we know we are not being commiserated with actually the qualifications that we do have, and then it came to the fore that also some of these degrees were fake as well. But from that perspective of handling the credentials and how they credentialed the police officers with this particular fake degree, there was no really clarity that really came to the public for. Well, it might really maybe have gone way over my head, but I cannot remember. Maybe on that note briefly.
I think that is why I was saying some of the policies they came up with have just been given out towards the end of their term. And one of the biggest problems was actually on human resource in the National Police Service. But also don't forget, the law gives them the mandate to delegate some of these duties to the Inspector General, so that the Inspector General makes decisions with his officers. They take to the National Police Service Commission for approval. So while the commission might want to do ABCD, they had a lot of encumbrances coming from the National Police Service. But yes, I know on terms of human resource, policies on education, policies on career progression. Actually, I think they were just finalizing those policies about a month or two ago. And yes, that was a problem, but I think now we have these things in place, and we are hoping that the next team should be able to work with the team that is now on the ground to actualize some of these things, so that we avoid what we saw in terms of those academic issues.
All right. Heavily also on police vetting is what we can remember Kavuludi for.
Yeah.
Other than other reforms that we do know, the police vetting, was it an exercise in futility, if you may weigh in, Dr. Khanenje?
You know, watching yesterday, and I want to believe the minister, the CS was, you know, speaking from the bottom of her heart, and perhaps that is what she believes. But to suggest they have performed beyond what expectations is engaging in unnecessary hyperbole.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know what is the metrics of expectations. It could be low expectations, and they place the bar way too low.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's like awarding an A for a student who has gotten 50%. You know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. However, considering the circumstances under which, of course, this commission has also been working, and we understand some of the entrenched issues, you know, within the service up to date, I think they have tried. Now, one question you just raised here that I think Kenyans are also, you know, waiting to hear: the vetting process. We heard some of our police officers fail to explain the sources of the millions they make in a week or in a day. And we are curious to find out what happened to them, because they admitted culpability. They were caught, pants down, for lack of a better word. And so what happened to these police officers? Are they still in service? Have they been arraigned in court? Because nothing has actually happened ever since. So, you know, the police service plays a very important role in this country.
Yes.
The basis of the law enforcement and everything else. Investigations, including the war against corruption that we're fighting right now. And so getting the public confidence in them by actually explaining or taking action, you know, rhetoric has to be followed by action. A lot of times that is an area we've always fell short. And so I think going forward, based on the recommendations they have made and some of the suggestions, if some of them are going to be implemented, and the process they undertook in the last couple of years is seen to be followed through, and not just a specter to show the public that something is going on, outside that is going to be increasingly difficult to convince an ordinary Kenyan who is suffering plenty that actually there is progress being made along this line.
All right, so you're grading as well. We got a 6 from Werunga. What will be your grade? For the
My grade?
Yes.
I tend to be fair, but at the same time very firm in my assessments, and so I will give them 48%.
No, on a scale of 1 to 10. So we just want to get where, leave alone the percentage.
So that will be 5.
That will be 5?
Yes.
All right, that will be 5. Okay, let's hear from Professor Naomi Damba.
It's interesting, Debarl, what my colleagues have enumerated. I think it's a time that people are quickly running to KPI, you know, how good am I doing? But people not asking the public, how good am I doing? And so, you know, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, what about the public? Okay, the point is, yes, there is a new focus. There is a new focus. Ultimately, I see housing where police are going to be integrated in the community, which is good. That's wonderful. I don't like the uniform, like most Kenyan, and I don't know why we are changing that uniform from what we had, which was very nice international standard. There is an issue that Captain Werunga said, which is local ownership. For people to understand, these are utumizi kwa watu, they are our people. they are protecting us.
Yes.
And if you take a sample of a community from one place to another in Kenya, I don't think you will get that kind of positive result that we are hearing this morning. The credential training of police, making sure they have higher credential degrees in order to be able to function in a digital era is taking place, but it's in a very slow way.
Yes.
We still have so many people who cannot read numbers, you know, and they're judging whether or not you're overspeeding or not, but they can't read. They cannot manage those machines that they're using. And so we have a mixed bag of push and pull. Corruption is still very high. We cannot afford to sweep corruption under the table. So overall, the bar, the jury is still up. And I will rate them 4.5 on a scale of 10, which is closer to Dr. Kanenje's rating.
All right.
So we have a lot of work to do.
So we get an aggregate average.
Right. But I just
Which
give
is
me a
5.
second on what he said. I think, remember, I was part of the vetting for some time. And the first group of, actually 3 groups that I participated in. The senior most, the second senior most, and the third senior most. And actually officers were sent home. So officers were sacked. And that one I can confirm. I think along the way, after some of us decided to resign, probably things went wrong. But you also read the other day that when this commission wanted to sack 300 police officers in the Department of Traffic, the 3 senior officers refused to agree. And that's why this commission did not even recruit police officers towards the end of their term. And those are the things I was trying to tell you, that even as we rate them, we know there are so many things that were happening behind the scenes that were actually making their work very difficult. I think it's important we understand that. So that's why, because some of us have some inside information, and I'm not saying we must give them 6, but I think under those difficult circumstances, they've really tried. But yes, officers were sacked. Along the way, officers have been sacked until this last group of 300 they wanted to sack. Then the IG and his deputies, I think, disputed that thing.
All right.
But yes, officers were sacked.
Okay, could you comment also the 90 new prosecutors, unless I can see also you have something to say on the performance of National Police Service Commission?
Maybe just a word on that. Of course, they always say that the test of the pudding is in the eating.
Yes.
And I quite agree with what Captain Werunga is saying, that there is an effort. And producing reports is one effort. But then implementing those reports and seeing results on the ground is another. Because if you look at the issue of traffic on our roads, we're still having a mess there. We've just talked about security. We've just talked about corruption. I mean, and you can see the country is still breathing, you know, heavily on all these challenges. So to me, what is happening inside the boardroom is well and good, but at least as a public, we haven't seen that translated into the ground. Now, extending that then to comment on what you have asked about, I was so happy to see the prosecutor now trying to train and also involve these trained people in terms of getting sufficient evidence so that you can get convictions, because we have all seen all these high profiled arrests, and then we don't see anything that is happening in terms of prosecution and conviction. And we've said here that even if it means, as the prosecution is taking, this effort, the judiciary could also do the same thing, that set up courts, so that we can see this some direction. Because I'm afraid to say, one gets an impression that we are losing momentum on this, even this war on corruption. We saw demolition start, there is loss of momentum. It's
definitely obvious.
Yeah, so there is something that is not going right. If there is now identification of a capacity issue, that is good. But let's see the results. Because all we see, okay, we are now doing this, we're doing this, no results.
Right. So much style without substance. Maybe we should say that is what we are seeing, a lot of drama. But when it tapers off and trying to see the substance behind it, we can't see anything, no prosecution at all. Yeah. People are not arraigned in court, or if at all they are, of course, they're coming out on bail, which is, you pay some measly amount as well.
Yeah, and of course the country and the ordinary mwananchi suffers in the process. Now, the move to hire 90 new prosecutors is something very positive.
Let's before we go to the prosecutors, I think also I needed to ask, the IPOA also presented their report as well, because we're turning their focus on the commissioners. But there's still questions which are pending, because IPOA, and I know the immediate former chair of IPOA, Mashara Njeru, was here some time, and we asked him about the issue of, what was happening in Mumias when the police went there, and there was brutality that happened. Women were raped. We saw some of the women also bleeding copiously from some of, tender places. The question will be again, they promised that after 1 year we will get this particular report. After 1 year we'll have known what really happened to baby Pendo. But up to right now, or up to this moment, we've seen now they presented their report as well, but we've not known what happened to baby Pendo. We've not known what happened to, the police brutality in Mumias as well. So who is asking about these particular questions? Because yes, things like this will just taper off and we'll forget about them. But we need someone to be asking, where is the report? Where is the report? Any of you?
I think, one, we need to understand that IPOA, just like the National Police Service Commission, they write, they give it to somebody to implement.
Yes.
IPOA gives to the DPP and the police to implement. So if they gave the reports about Mumias, they gave the report about baby Pendo, they gave reports on many other issues, the person who is supposed actually to follow through and ensure that these officers are arraigned in court if they are culpable is the ODPP. That is the office that actually needs to do that. So yes, as much as they've done a bit of what they were expected to do, I think they're also constrained that they did not have prosecutorial powers as an IPOA. So the best they could do was to write, recommend, and send it to ODPP. Don't forget that these are the same officers you are talking about who are supposed to implement what you are talking about.
Yes.
So this report is supposed to be, when IPOA has investigated, the DCA has also to do its bit, then they share the files and take to the ODPP. So I think it's a bit difficult in terms of even the way EACC was complaining, that they investigate, they do everything, but they have no prosecutorial powers. Probably as a nation, we need to start thinking, should we extend some of these powers, or shall we be spreading too much risk when we spread too much prosecutorial powers to some of these organizations? But I think it is something we need to have a narrative to talk about as a country and see how then do we expect IPOA to be effective. And IPOA is feared by the police, but how can they be effective when the best they can do is just to recommend prosecution and hand over to somebody else or another office? So I think that's where the problem is, and probably we need to talk about it as a nation.
All right. Okay. Professor Nomidamba?
Debarl, President Barack Obama said that change is brought about because ordinary people do extraordinary things. My friend, Governor Kivutha Kibwana, is experimenting and doing something which is real, which is using the governance and the powers of the people. The people decide if the road is complete. The people decide if a project is complete. They give feedback in the loop so that the governor can say affirmatively, yes, it was done, 90% or 80%.
Yes.
But I cannot accept a group of people sitting down and writing a nice report and say, we've done well. You know, let's not joke with the people's ideas and and opinion. Let's make sure that police reform is indeed a police reform, and we're very serious about it, and that we can now chart a different way. If you are in America, the people have power. If you are in Scandinavia, the people have power. If you are in Japan, the people say so about what needs to happen. And so we cannot woodwork the people in giving ourselves high credit.
All right, thank you.
This is the point.
Quickly on the recruitment of the 93 prosecuting officers, I think we were on you, Dr. Hanenje.
Yeah, as the process of saying, it's a very positive move by the director. You know, the challenge is and has been always not exactly because you lack a prosecutor, but sometimes you lack poorly trained, sometimes literally incompetent and under-resourced office. When you have that, you're going to find yourself in the court without actually sufficient evidence. You're not ready, and then the judge might even believe that, let's say, whoever you brought before the court is guilty, but because you have to prove in law and adduce evidence to that effect, if you don't have it, you have to let someone go. And this has been a recurring problem that I think we need to actually address. So just the numbers alone are not sufficient. They need the resources and they need the training to make sure that before you take someone before court for corruption, for murder, for anything, you actually have sufficient evidence to make sure they will never get out of that. But the trouble is, a lot of times we don't have that. And so people are let go, and then the ordinary Mwananchi, the average Kenyan thinks, well, those who have power will never be prosecuted. But a lot of times actually it's because we have no sufficient evidence to prosecute them.
All right. Let's hear from Erastus Mwencha on that, the prosecutors.
I think doctors nailed, on the head. Debarl, we now live in a digital era where people are very informed and they know what's happening in their environment. They see what's happening and they can see all these things that we talk about. We've just talked about, for instance, lifestyle audit. And the people know the facts on the ground. They will tell you, I mean, Debarl, we know you. You made all this money. But where did you get it from? I mean, and we're not doing anything. I mean, and are you saying that it is because these people don't have resources, they don't have capacity? But it is also partly because of this corruption, that even prosecutors themselves are compromised. You can give them resources, but they will be compromised. So I think sometimes I feel like, I don't know what to say next, because you are disarmed. On one hand, you can see that the efforts that are being put in place for us to do good is there, but that good is not coming.
Yes.
So I would suggest that, yes, there's nothing like success.
Yes.
And success begets success. Start with a few cases, even high-profile ones. Let's see heads roaring, and then people will accompany you, and you can even get that steam behind you that you can do.
Yep. Briefly, we need a short break. Let's hear from Virunga, briefly.
Yes, I think just to add on what the panels have said, we need to understand that you cannot reform prosecution without reforming the security sector. You must reform the police, you must reform the prosecution, you must reform the judiciary, you must reform the correctional service. So even if Nordin Haji is doing very well, of course that's one of the biggest numbers he has done. But you see, the cases must be investigated well for the prosecutor to have credible evidence, for them to take it to a credible judge, for the judge to have the capacity to judge well, for either to jail this person or to release this person.
Yes.
So we must look at it in totality, even if he is doing so well, and he has done so well so far. But I think he needs to be augmented with these efforts through the whole chain of the criminal justice system. Because at one point, he has taken so many cases to court. What is stopping them? It's not him. It's not his office. It's the judiciary. The judiciary keeps on postponing these cases, either because of resources, because of numbers, So at the end of the day, the whole system must flow for us to see the success of all these things.
Right.
I totally agree with him. There's a lot of corruption also.
Yep.
But you see, Chairman, if the system is working well, if the system has people with capacity and knowledge to do what they need to do, if they do their work well, then you'll find that all this chain will flow so well that by the time these people are in jail, they're truly in jail because the system has worked well.
Right. You're right, it's 7 on the nose. We want to take a short break right now. Time is really talking. Before we do that, just a quick readings from what we have on the tweets. Commission had good intentions. This is what Original KC is saying. Commission had good intentions, but they faced resistance from National Police Service. Most of police in Kenya cannot be reformed. How can somebody who scored D- reform within 6 years? Right? That is what Original KC is asking also. The hustler, what Simiyu Irunga does not know is that the senior officers who were sacked are now deployed somewhere else. Right? Also, Andrew J. Franklin says 6 years of trying, but where are the concrete results? How independent we are or were the members of the authority? Why was the NPS Act 2011 not fully implemented in accordance with its letter as well as that of the 2010 Constitution? Probing questions there from him as well. Kennedy Omogi is saying police in Kenya cannot be policed. Bad attitude, poor culture, interference. IPOA can do very little or nothing at all. And then also we have Jacob Abere Mtalala saying, end-term performance of IPOA, I give it 7 out of 10, and remaining marks is for not giving it prosecution powers and rigidity. Police officers giving red healing by shelving recommendations. Right. Leave it for you to decide for that or as well as we take a short break. When we come back, of course, we'll look at a raft of issues locally, broad range of issues as far as security is concerned here in the country, regionally, and taking a panoramic view of what is happening also in the world as far as security is concerned. So don't go away. Remember to hit us on Twitter. LiveNTV is our Twitter handle. LiveNTV, our profile name on Facebook. Remember, always give us a thumbs up there and like our page as well. And 20686 is our SMS portal. Don't go away. Yes, we are standing on guard, keeping an eye on the enemy, and of course we are discussing a lot of issues as far as security is concerned here in the country, and also we'll be looking at what is happening regionally and across the world as well. And I'm holding court this morning with Professor Naomi Damba, who's the Vice Chancellor of KCA University, also is an expert on foreign policy and defense. We do have with us Erastus Mwencha, who is a former Deputy Chair of the African Union. Also, we do have with us Dr. Hassan Khanenje, who is a director at the Horn Institute. Also, we have with us Captain Dr. Wirunga Simiyu, who is the Executive Director of African Security and Strategic Studies. And we're continuing with the conversation apace here on how also the National Police Service Commission has actually performed, I should say, for the last 6 years, and now they're exiting, and also IPOA as well. But before we also continue with the conversation, we promised to circle back with Naomi Damba. We have this particular bite about the corruption that was the report on corruption that was given out by the EACC, and police also, they are way high above as far as corruption index is concerned. Take a listen.
In terms of government departments and agencies prone to corruption, Kenya Police is leading at 23.8%, as the presenter shared with us. Other departments include, again, the National Police Service Commission at 13%. The Commission recovered stolen assets worth approximately 500 million shillings through court proceedings and out-of-court settlements. And this amount is almost double the amount recovered in the previous financial year of 2016 and 17.
Winning the war on corruption means we are delivering a happy country to ourselves and also to the future.
Right. Police will always be taking that particular leading position as far as corruption is concerned. So how are we going to lance this boil of corruption in this country, especially with the police reforms and what is happening in terms of remuneration, in terms of also allowances?
Debarl, we cannot afford to look elsewhere, but keep our eye on the ball as far as corruption is concerned. We have discussed this issue on this stage several times, and Kenyans must not relax, because if we do, then it's going to be back business as usual. We are going to be back fighting each other at every election cycle that is coming. The ethnic groups are going to be killing each other, and all the investors move to Kigali so that they can perform higher than 7% that we're looking at. So Kinoti and Haji are a unique individual. They're doing, in my opinion, heroic job.
Yes.
But their job will not happen or be enhanced without reforming judiciary, and in this case, taking select group of people, group of judges that just need to deal with corruption and nothing else. There is no point to sit back and say every judge is going to judge corruption. We're going to clog the system, and once we clog the system, then we cannot move from one case to another, and the public cannot get feedback on who is corrupted and who is not. The point is, if your salary is 40,000, is it 40,000? And you have several millions in the bank, what business are you doing? You know, so let's not pretend. Let us open up a new field, a new camp for corrupt people, bigger than committee, and lock them in and have them do hard labor and stay there for a while, so that we can send a powerful message to the citizen of this country that hard work pays and corruption does not pay.
All right. Let's hear from Dr. Khanenje briefly.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to, especially, Captain Wirunga alluded to some of the officers, for instance, who were relieved of their responsibilities. Some of them, of course, were not. Now, what I say is, when you catch a thief who is serving in government, it is important that you arrest them, you relieve them of their responsibilities, it's also called sacking, you prosecute them, you take back what they stole, and you make them miserable for the rest of their natural life, that will be the only way to send a message that there are no shortcuts to success.
Right.
Because what we have, and is a culture that has actually built in our youth, they think shortcut can get you somewhere. And it doesn't matter what we do as long as we don't send that powerful message, because just sacking a government officer is not enough. We need to punish them. In advanced countries, a crime you commit when you're 16, even in the United States, is going to stay on your record until the day you die.
Okay.
Lots of opportunities are going to go away because of that. We need to set that example.
Okay. Let's say from
Yeah,
Dr.
I
Odunga.
think just to complement on that, you know, in this country, we've made crime a beneficial thing amongst the Kenyan people. You steal today, tomorrow you're driving a Vogue, and Kenyans clap for you. I think what Haji and Kinoti are trying to do, and I'm sorry for them because they are really working in a very difficult context. They are trying to make crime a very expensive undertaking in this country.
Yes.
So that if you commit a crime, they will be on your neck like you've never seen. But the problem is, how is the whole system going to... I go back to the criminal justice system.
Yes.
How is it going to assist them to make sure that crime becomes an expensive affair in this country? Because just like you said, in other countries, your records will be, with the push of a button,
yes,
they will know Simi committed a traffic offense 20 years ago. Simi was arraigned in court 15 years ago. And therefore, so many things will get out of your way because of your record, and yet we don't seem to be doing it here. So even as the two officers, and we compliment them, we support them, even as much as they're doing what they're doing, they must have a system that must assist them, Debarl, to make Kenyans realize that corruption and crime is a very expensive affair in this country.
Thank you.
Now, just to finish on that.
Yes, please.
I've never understood why, like Chairman said, the judiciary has not, or the professor, the judiciary has not dedicated enough judges. You see, you can have a division on corruption or whatever they call it, but if you don't have enough officers to deal with those cases at a higher level, high court, court of appeal, then how are you assisting these other officers who are working and dealing with corruption when the judiciary itself is not fully, to me I think, is not fully dedicating itself to assist this? Because when you keep on postponing these cases, that the chair said, you're actually losing the momentum. We want people to be taken to court. Within a week, they are jailed or they are released because there's no evidence, and people know that the systems are working. I think that's my view on that.
But the whole issue of if they're not really assigning enough judiciary officers to actually, escalate these cases as well. What is the aspect also, or the place of the mediators? Because I think also that is really gaining traction. We have an act, and I think also the judiciary is giving, a muscle, to the mediation process as well. So this is becoming like, a sort of an arm of the judiciary as well, with the mandate of the judiciary to handle some of these cases if they're in bulk. And we know some of these cases have been hanging there for quite a while because of the slowness of and the glacial slowness of the judiciary. They've been so slow on the uptake in terms of expediting these cases. Do you think in any way, just briefly, that the mediation process and the mediators in this country will actually be maybe the prime solution to actually solve these cases?
Debarl, you have raised a very important question here. And I think, short of saying that we need a new deal, and it's starting to sound like an old gramophone that is stuck. We keep on talking of
a broken record.
Corruption.
Yes.
But we really need a new deal, because the hemorrhage that is taking place in this country in terms of the losses that we are incurring in terms of corruption, and I think now what we have seen, we have moved away from reporting them, because I think it was starting to look like it's a witch hunt or whatever, and so that people don't get the pain, and particularly with the recent history of trying to raise revenue and you're talking about corruption at the same time.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter that we're still losing. I mean, you now see in Eldoret farmers who have not been paid. This is a national disaster for us.
Yes.
You're not going to have food. But some people have money in their pockets because they imported maize. They have money in their pockets. But somebody's not going to school because of that. This is a national disaster, Debarl. So the point that you raise, what we do, I think to me, I've seen statements from the judicial, from the executive, from the DCI and the DPP. Why don't we have a joint operation, set up a special court, which doesn't even have an appeal, get judges from the Commonwealth countries, that you don't even have an appeal, acquit all this, those that are, put them in, and then finish, so that the country knows that we are addressing this thing with the seriousness that it deserves.
Thank you. Right. Also, I want to draw your attention, as we're speaking about corruption and what the EACC had said about the Kenya Police, the Ministry of Interior also is not left off the hook as well. You can look at what was actually on, I think, page 3 of the Daily Nation. Yes, page 5. Yeah, study there. A sideways story says, Interior Ministry is most corrupt. 2 in 3 Kenyans rank the Interior Ministry as the most corrupt, with 3 in 10 saying they had paid bribes in the chief's office and police stations while seeking government services. A survey has shown other Ministry of Interior departments where Kenyans said they had paid bribes, Registrar of Persons, County Commissioner's Office, as well as Immigration and Civil Registration Department, all coming in the top 10 institutions where Kenyans paid bribes. And in light of this also, I want just to show you what is on the front page of the Business Daily as well. And Kenya defies austerity, buys 12 US helicopters. This is in light of what you're talking about when it comes to austerity measures, where the country is, especially right now, in a financial pickle as well. But still, they've gone full steam ahead, and they're buying these 12 US helicopters. The planes are part of a 253 million shillings arm deals that Nairobi signed with Washington and got the United States Congress approval in May last year. And if you may remember, this particular approval also was very contentious because even the Congress raised queries and questions about that particular deal. They said this was way highly overpriced, right? And it had stalled for a while until they passed they passed the approval for this particular deal to go through. This is a question that we are raising because if we may look back also, I think the Business Daily had this particular story. This was on the 1st of October. Ex-military chiefs in Jordan jets puzzle. And we had the former chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, General Retired Jeremiah Kianga, and former Defense Permanent Secretary Zachary Mwaura, who have been entangled in the procurement of fighter jets worth 2.9 billion shillings from Jordan, which were later found to be defective. And the Public Accounts Committee had that the aircraft bought more than 10 years ago from Royal Jordan Air Force for $29 million US are now being used as, hear this, spare parts for F-5 fighter jets. Spare parts. So they're actually in the hangar. You go and grab maybe an altimeter. You go and remove a tack, you go and remove maybe the fuselage. What is really going on as far as austerity measures is concerned? We need to look at what is happening also in the Ministry of Interior. First of all, we've raised that query about this is happening with the registrar, those small offices, but within the Interior Ministry as well, the confidential accounts that we are never told about. And they say due to security matters, the confidential accounts, there's so much transactions that happens within a day. We can actually we're talking in the millions under the guise of confidential accounts. Could we just hear from that? Let's hear from the captain. I think this was a fighter jet.
And it will be the last one.
Fighter jet pilot. First, you can tell us more about this particular aircraft because the Auditor General had raised queries about the supplementary direct procurement supplementary of this particular jets.
Let's start with the Minister of Interior, then we shall go to the jets.
Ministry of Interior, yes.
I think the Minister of Interior, one of the things that I've never understood, and maybe they will tell us one day, you have a chief and an assistant chief, paid for, trained by the government as the last pillar down here, and yet you are having cattle rustling, you are having clashes in Narok, and these are government officers who are supposed to be the eyes of the government to ensure that things go well. We have assistant chiefs and chiefs in areas of former Northeastern, and yet we have aliens getting ID cards. And yet the system is such that these officers are supposed to say, this is not a person from this area. I'm just giving an example.
Yes.
So when somebody talks about the Ministry of Interior being very corrupt, it's because most of the services they deal with touch directly on the Kenyan person. If it is birth certificates, if it is ID cards, if it is death certificates, if it is anything that you want to get, passport and whatever, it touches on the Kenyan person. So when you spread this corruption across the whole spectrum of the ministry, I think it becomes completely amorphous in terms of the level of corruption. And sometimes it could not be even the senior officers in the ministry, although of course you've touched the issue of a confidential account.
Yes.
Nobody knows how much is given, so I don't want to talk about it. But yes, we know there's confidential money given to the ministry to do ABCD. But because we don't know the figure.
No. We've had the Auditor General saying that, of course, that should actually be laid bare. They should be, audited.
I'm coming there. I'm coming there.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay.
So one, we don't know how much is given. Two, Debarl, no country in the world, and that's about statehood, no country will want to bear everything on how they deal with national security. I'm not speaking for them, but I think I've done my studies. I know it's very difficult for a country to bear itself. Some of this money is meant for rapid use in the event of a national security issue, so that you don't have to go back to the Ministry of the Treasury for you to be able to get money to make things happen. So that confidential account is everywhere. It is in defense, it is in IS, it is in the Ministry of Interior. When you go to the US, it's the same. It is something that has been used by governments all over the world. Now, it becomes very difficult when I come to you and tell you I have 10 million confidential money to ensure that when I have a problem in Campedo and the ministry, the police have no money to send people there, then I need to give them this 5 million, 2 million. That's the kind of money they use in terms of confidential emergencies and things that are not been budgeted for.
Right,
so
right. But the question also from the Auditor General is, where is the legality of actually this particular transaction? Because we have 8.6 billion shillings just going to the Ministry of Interior without the authority of the Treasury.
How can it be without the authority of
That is what now the Auditor General is asking.
I'm telling you what I think I understand. The Ministry of Interior will give its budget estimates, and it will say this is the money we want from the ministry. That budget estimate will go to the budget committee in the National Assembly. The budget committee must approve the budget lines before that money is released to the ministry. There's no way money can come from the Treasury and go directly to the ministry. It must go through the budget committee of the National Assembly. The Assembly will approve it, and budget line by line, then that money is now released to the ministry. So I don't think, and I don't know how it works, but that's how I understand.
So the Auditor General was actually...
I'm not faulting anybody. I'm just saying what I thought.
If we question this particular deposit without the authority of the Treasury, that we have a tidy sum of amount of money as confidential account, 8.6 billion shillings, without the authority of the Treasury, does it not really ring a bell?
Get it from me. There's no way the money can come from the National Consolidated Fund directly to the ministry. It must go through by National Assembly. National Assembly must approve that budget for it to come. I think what we are trying to say here is, on the budget line you'll say give us 10 billion, but you don't explain what it is. But that 10 billion must be approved by Parliament before it goes to the ministry. So I'm just and I'm not speaking for anybody, that's my view, I could be wrong. Now, when it comes to that idea of national security, and I've studied vastly on this, national security is an expensive affair. National security is always done under the framework of access to information, where we have this thing called the need to know basis. Some people even in government have no idea how the government operates its national security.
Yes.
So it is sometimes vague in the context of how we Kenyans and other people look at it, but there are those who exactly know what is happening within the context of national security. I'm not defending the government today, I just want to speak on how it happens.
Okay.
So when we get to that point, I think it's very difficult for us to speak about national confidential funds within the Ministry of Interior, because it is spread across all the departments and the sub-departments in the ministry to do things that they need to do that we don't necessarily have to know as Kenyans, but they are doing it on our behalf. So let me come to the last one, the helicopters.
Yeah, we'll talk about the helicopters. Let's just hear from Erastus Mwencha on this briefly.
Debarl, I just want to build on what Werunga is saying. And I talk from an experience of having had to handle finance and also security operations, particularly in Somalia, where we had the challenge, particularly on information. And for our budget, which was thoroughly scrutinized, every cent that we spent was scrutinized. We always had a challenge because when you have operations in theater, the security will always tell you that they need some funds, particularly for securing information, without indicating how they spend that money, because that will endanger your sources.
True.
And for that. But the only slight departure then I would have with my brother Werunga is, if you find this expenditure being the bigger part than otherwise, then there's something wrong. That your information is more than your equipment. Your information is more than your operations. And that is what we need to know. At least cap it or indicate that if this information is so expensive, then something is wrong. Because I think for the sake of transparency and also accountability, it's always good to say so much money was used in terms of security budget, and that the auditor should even be able to look at it and just simply tell the Kenyans after under an affidavit that I've looked at the accounts and I'm satisfied they're okay. But to say they shouldn't be audited raises a lot of questions, especially in this day of scarcity of resources.
Yes.
Debarl, there is a term called proportionate, which means that's in a military strategy, which means you don't use a bomb to kill a mosquito.
Exactly.
Proportionate spending, proportional response to a given situation. So here are three stages that clearly need to be looked at. One is we need to be realistic about what we perceive perceived as a home and defense security need, which is real and potential. Secondly, we need a very clear stock of what is it that we have and how well we are using what we have. And lastly, a clear and prudent assessment of the new procurement in proportion to real and potential threat. And if you take all that in consideration, what has happened to the policy, and then you now come to the issue of what Captain Werunga is talking about, 12 helicopter. I have no problem with buying 12 helicopter if there is a clear need that the country needs 12 helicopters and what they are going to do. I will have a problem to just stockpile, so that it looks good. Because every general need a new tool, and everyone is talking like little kids. They're all happy with the new toy.
With the new toy.
We cannot afford that.
Okay, Hassan, you got something?
Yeah. Of course, countries justify a lot of things in the name of national security, and it's not that it's unfounded. A lot of times you don't want to broadcast or telegraph your potential enemies what you're doing. But when it comes to expenditures, which in a country like ours, we don't have a lot of money to expend, or when those expenditures are going to touch on obvious things that are even discussed in Congress, then it's not going to become a secret anymore. It's going to become public. And therefore, there has to be a procurement process that's actually transparent. Now, the challenge is, as a country, we've been partners, especially with Western nations, for a very long time, since independence, with Britain, with the United States and others. But sometimes we have to do opportunity cost. Today, the Pentagon has been buying helicopters from Russia to give them 12 guns because they are hardy and they're cheaper and in maintenance, and they can be operated, and Afghans have the experience in doing that, as opposed to giving them their own. Why? Because they're doing the opportunity cost in terms of money. Yeah, and so we should also look at the opportunity cost. Sometimes we get into something that is a little bit too expensive for us when we could actually have gone somewhere else and get something cheaper. Neither should we be going for things which are from the Cold War era that are so old, of no relevance, especially when you're facing a very determined enemy in the name of Al-Shabaab in Somalia, because we have our men and women deployed there. Now, having said that, we have one of the most disciplined forces in this region. Our men and women work very hard, to defend us. But it's important that our government and our president also knows and appreciates they're actually human beings. And so there are chances that you could have some leaders within our own system who could actually want to compromise the system and get some kickbacks from some of these deals. So, and that is national security, because if you give our men and women substandard equipment, you are putting their lives in danger.
Right.
You understand?
Yes. Yes, and we need to question this, Dr. Khaninja, because yes, if Congress actually raised a red flag on the pricing of this particular helicopters, and it was put on hold for a while because they were wondering why the exorbitant prices, don't you think we need a very good scrutiny from the Auditor General as far as this is concerned as well? And of course, my question again would be, leave that aside. Then we have some very second-hand, useless helicopters that they cannot actually, operate. They use as spare parts right now, and we've set aside tidy good sum of money. Somebody somewhere has to be responsible for this.
I want to be very systematic in answering this. One, I was a helicopter pilot.
Yes.
For many years. Two, we must differentiate what we are discussing. We're initially talking about confidential funds.
We are done with the confidential funds.
No. He is putting them all together. And that's why I'm saying budgeting for confidential is a bit confidential. Budgeting for acquiring of national weapons for the military or the police is not confidential. Okay, so I think it's important we differentiate confidential funds and buying for national security in terms of the military and the police. So I want to come to the helicopters. I think we are confusing here. The helicopters are not the tractors. The controversial issue was about the tractors, aircrafts that were meant for surveillance. But these helicopters are meant to join our unit in Embakasi that has been running these helicopters for the time I've known.
Wait a minute.
So there's a difference between the Huey 500 helicopters, fighter helicopters, that are being bought by these 12. These 12 are not the tractors. These are helicopters that are meant to supplement what we have in Embakasi. This is a fully fledged operational army helicopter unit. That is fighter. It's a fighter unit. Okay. It has missiles, it has rockets and whatever. So these 12...
That we understand. The 12 we do understand. But the question with the 12 is, do we need them right now?
We need them.
If we are actually trying to enforce austerity measures. Yeah?
Let me explain. You see, there's tear and wear. And you must maintain certain preparedness capacity in your military. So through the issue of tear and wear, you always replace those that get out of service. And every time they get out of service, you give them together, you say, we need 5, you go and buy 5. You need 12, you go and buy 12. Because you must maintain a certain level of preparedness for that unit for you to say it is an operational unit. So this is something that happens everywhere. So let's not confuse the tractors and these helicopters. The tractors were meant to be surveillance aircrafts that were supposed to come and assist the Kenya National Defense and the police to surveil Somalia. So these are two different things. And this is done everywhere in any military. Tear and wear, you do replacement. Attrition, you do replacement. So that you have a standard preparedness strategy for that unit, for you to be able to qualify that unit as an operational unit.
Thank you.
So that is one. Number two, the tractors, I think we dealt with that.
Yes.
There was corruption, there's everything, it was stopped and they've never been bought. I don't know.
This is from the, okay.
From the US, the same country.
All right.
Now, Jordan.
Jordan, yes, this Jordan is what I'm interested in.
Jordan,
yes.
We've had a habit of buying second-hand things from time to time. Once in a while, we buy from South Africa. So this time, I think they went to Jordan to buy second-hand F5 jet fighters to augment what we have, because we have F5. So the idea was to build the capacity of the F5 to a certain level where we can say we are meeting the threats regionally, for us to say we have an air force that can actually meet our national threats. But I think with the issue of corruption, I think comes in because I also hear this story. These things came here, they were not operational, they were not even removed from the boxes, Debarl, what I hear. And therefore what is happening, because they came in parts, you know, they were not flown as fully functional aircrafts. They were put into boxes as parts to be assembled in Kenya. So what is happening, and this is what we hear, I'm not competent to say it is true, most of them were not functional. So what they're doing, they're using those parts that came. So those ones that we have, when they have need for a spare, they don't go and buy, they just grab on these ones and replace. We've had that story for a long time. I cannot confirm exactly because I've never been to that camp.
$2.9 million.
That is the thing.
This is what you're talking
now,
about.
What the government needs to do is to question those who are behind this purchase for wastage of government resources, and they must be held to account. That is the total and bottom line of this. You cannot waste our 3 billion shillings and then these things are rotting in boxes wherever they are and you walk scot-free. That is wrong, that is unacceptable, and the government should not have let them go. So that is corruption, Debarl. Yes.
Okay, so what else we need to know is regarding also when you're talking about the choppers. We had in 2016 also the Augusta Westland helicopter that went down in Mathare, a brand new helicopter, so to speak. And in this particular helicopter, I think a tidy good sum of money of 680 million shillings. Then the question is, it was actually shrouded in controversy. Cartels within the Ministry of Interior, you know, they were really advised that Augusta Westland is not conducive for our environment, truly. And that's why actually it fell in a heap just from the sky. I think I watched a news clip, and you know, we had the propellers stalling, and you could see that particular chopper just coming down in a heap. But they went against the advice of the technicians because they were interested parties on this as well. 680 million shillings. We've never been told how that money was paid to this Augusta farm. Nothing has ever been actually told about this particular losing of this helicopter. Were we compensated in any way? And who are these cartels within also the Ministry of Interior? So there's a lot of mystery. You get second-hand helicopters, they are reconditioned and repainted, then they come and launch here in the country as brand new helicopters. But there is a wheelie dealing that is really happening also within those ministries as well. Could you talk about...
With the Ministry of Interior, and that's why those of us who participated in police reforms, we say the Inspector General must be given his own votes. Now, we're not saying the Inspector General is an angel, but at least we can now walk to his office and ask him, why did you spend this money, knowing that what you're buying is wrong? Now, this thing was held on by the Ministry of Interior, but when I was reading this booklet of the current reforms, I think now there's a will to transfer that money to be going directly to the office of the Inspector General. What has been happening with the Ministry of Interior is that when the police ask for what they need, that is the end of what they want. The mandarins in the Ministry of Interior will do their own technical whatever as specs. They'll go and buy something without sharing with the police, and wherever that thing comes from, because they hold the money for the police. That has been the biggest problem, Debarl, that the police, even as they ask for their own, they have already been brought things that they never passed. And we read even together with you here, when this guy who supplied the bulletproof vehicles, he was told, can you sit into that vehicle and we shoot it? The guy refused. He refused to sit in, and yet he was selling to the Kenyan government a vehicle that was supposed to be bulletproof. So I think if what we read the other day, these funds will now be going directly to the office of the Inspector General, then he'll be accountable to the Kenyan people as a unit on how he's getting funds from the treasury, what he's buying, and why did he do ABCD. That has been our cry, and if it works, then most of these issues we are hearing, Ministry of Interior, Police, Ministry of Interior, should come to an end. Then we shall be able to hold the Police Inspector General to account for whatever they purchase on behalf of the government.
Thank you, thank you. We can close on this unless you have any comment on this particular topic. Nomi Damba, briefly.
Yeah,
just to reiterate to what Captain Werunga is talking about, and all of us, Debarl, is that in the military-industrial complex, it's a complex indeed. There are a lot of arms, whether they're Eastern European, American, Israel, wherever. They're floating on the high seas for any buyer. And if someone wants to make money, this way to make a lot of money. And so we cannot, as a country, and the way we are, allow renegade salespeople and our own agents to mix and then cost us over a long period of time. I want to repeat again, there has to be a clear, prudent assessment of new procurement of military hardware. Period.
Okay.
First of all, let me say where I stand, that I have never been convinced about this armament because we pursue it sometimes blindly. Globally, of course, you know that it's not just a question of when we had the Cold War, people were always in this arms race, but they also it brought us in because, as he says, there is always this, like Captain was saying, you need a regional balance. So you know your neighbor's bought F5, you also now need F7. That if you pursue peace, you'll get peace.
Yes.
If you pursue, that's what you get. And what it does is making you poor. How much money do you need? How many things do we have to export to pay for 25 billion? When actually we need these roads, textbooks for schools and all that. Let's ask ourselves, are priorities right?
Thank you. Dr. Hassan Kanenji.
Yeah, corruption within the Interior Ministry when it comes, let's say, to procurement of arms is extremely something dangerous. It's something that touches on national security, because what we'll be doing is we'll be sending our men and women in harm's way in places like Somalia with defective equipment. They're literally going to be sitting ducks. It is not okay, and we should stop that.
Thank you. Right, let's just see what is happening internationally as well before we close up the show. We see also the security matters, and that is up next on the international news. Melania Trump cuddled a baby, handed out teddy bears and beamed smiles on her first day in Africa, kicking off a 4-country visit and receiving a warm welcome on a continent her husband once referred to as derisively those issues as well. But of course, this is, and they are developing stories as well. Also on the table is the issue of referendum, the second referendum as well. We'll still keep our eyes peeled on what is happening in Britain as well. But I want to thank you also, Dr. Gorongo Simiyu, for coming through this morning, and of course for that cogent discussion that we've had. Also Dr. Hassan Kanyenje, who is the director of the Horn Institute. Thank you for coming through as well. Also Ambassador Erastus Mwencha, who is a former deputy chair of the African Union. Thank you for coming through as well. And also Professor Naomi Damba, who is the vice chancellor of KC University and also an expert on foreign policy and defense as well. And you as well, thank you very much for your valued company and your reactions also on Twitter. I really do appreciate. Living with Us is up next.